Perfect. So thank you and welcome to OMS's Mobility Monday, discussing structure discovery by Kristen Sims, and I'm just a tag along, Jimmy Morris here. So I'm on there. No, but we're excited to be able to present structure discovery to you. And I'm just going to kind of turn it over to Kristen because I think we're going to kind of go through some things, and then I'm going to give you also a lot of opportunities to ask questions as well as we go through there. So I'm just going to kind of turn it over to Miss Kristen.
Okay. Hi. I start out with just, I know my bio was in there. I am the over structure discovery programs here at Louisiana Tech University. And I teach this course over 10-week classes, for 3 hours a night every week. So we're going to try and make it a little bit shorter than that. So there's a lot of things to cover. But I do tend to talk kind of fast. So if I'm going too fast or anything like that, or you have questions about something that I said, please stop and ask me. I have no problem with that. And the same thing, I'm sure Jimmy's going to keep me straight. So let's see. So I'm going to start with the name structure discovery. This is a quote from nbpcb.org. The name structure discovery was first applied to the teaching of orientation and mobility, cane travel, in 1984 and was trademarked as structured discovery cane travel, SDCT, in 2009. The methods and principles that undergird structured discovery, however, come from the lived experiences of men and women who are blind and who have shared their experiences, attitudes, and techniques with each other through the organization of the National Federation of the Blind, NFB, since 1940. So just to break that down a little bit, and this is something that if you want to take the class, you're welcome to learn everything about it. But in the 1950s, this used to be referred to as the Jernigan method. He was the commissioner, Ken Jernigan was commissioner of the Iowa, or he was the director of the Iowa Commission for the Blind at that time. And in the 1970s, Jim Whitty wrote a book about the methods that they were using to teach. And that caught the interest of some people from Nebraska. So Nyman came to Iowa to learn about that methodology that they were using, that way that they were getting people to travel. They were using a significantly longer cane and doing a lot of things with echolocation. And so they started to use that method to teach people in Nebraska, the Nebraska Commission. In the 1980s, Alan Dodd, who was an O&M instructor from Europe, in England, he came to Nebraska and he ended up coining the term in 1984. He said that the way that they were teaching was more in the vein of structured discovery than what was then called more traditional methods. So since that time, it's continued to develop and as a teaching method, and those who are certified to teach in this structured discovery method are identified by a certification as NOMC, so National Orientation and Mobility Certified. So or National Orientation Mobility Certification. So structured discovery can be broken down by the words that make up its name. So that moves us into the next slide. I've never used a slideshow, so you guys bear with me. All right. So first is the structured part of structured discovery. This is usually the overlooked part of structured discovery. People tend to think about the discovery part and not the structured component. And really setting a student up for success is the goal of any good instructor. I think we can all agree on that. So the points that make up structured are setting goals and expectations, controlling input through thoughtful lesson design, guiding student understanding through questioning techniques, creating space for the development of perceptual awareness, and fostering student self-efficacy. The next part of structured discovery would be the discovery part of that. And this is really what people think about when they think of structured discovery. So in discovery learning, learning takes place through error detection and resolution. The skills that are learned through guided techniques can only be assessed through independent performance. Information is gained through firsthand experiences, and it's more easily retained and generalized because of that. And experiential learning actively engages reflexive thinking, problem solving, and promotes self-direction.
Ms. Kristen, can I add a couple things there?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, when I think about structured discovery, what does it really mean to me as I've kind of been going through the structure piece, kind of like what she said, is really about giving the skill sets to learn how to do the things, whether it's proper cane technique, proper cane arc, how to identify and cross streets, or whatever that may be, and give them the skill sets. But then we have to, what we like to do and do it as quickly as possible, but as safely as possible, is really giving that ability for them to start discovering by asking them some things that we're going to kind of get into, is about asking them questions and letting them start thinking about that. Getting their brain to start thinking, how can I do this? It's about problems. And I'm a firm believer, a lot of the things that we teach is a lot of common sense if you think about it, but you have to be kind of giving that information the first time. And then you think about it, it's like, why didn't I think about that? I have my students tell me that all the time. But giving that information, but then letting them expand on it. So that's kind of where that discovery part, and giving the opportunity to fall down, or to not do so well, or to succeed. I mean, so I think failure is a big part of that, as well as the success, because you just got to have both there to be able to really understand what they can do there.
Yeah. And I always tell my grad students, these future instructors who are going to seek NOMC status, I tell them that it's really a push and pull between guided and discovery. So we're really giving them information and then assessing for whether or not they've got it. And you can only assess that guided part if you see them do it. And that means you can't be part of it. So it's a real where we are, and where a student, how you can determine a student's progress is whether or not they're, you're able to step away from them. And that's kind of, even from the first lesson, a structured discovery instructor will give a practice time where they are not present, thereby confirming to the student that they are in charge of their own self evaluation. So they need to be monitoring themselves. And granted, they're not going to be in a place that's where they're not ready for. So that's that structured. Again, you got to make sure that they're in a place where they can be successful. So that's an important, the structured part is as important as discovery, if not more so, is making sure that you are aware of where someone's strengths lie.
So Kristen, that we had a message. I don't know if we want to take those towards the end, or we just want to kind of as they come along. How
Okay.
would you, so I mean, Jack sent a question. So what would that first lesson kind of really look like?
Yeah, cane technique is typically the first thing people are going to start out with. We do an open palm cane technique and pencil grip, which is, similar to a traditional, pencil grip. It's held with a pincer grip. Yeah, that open palm technique is typically new for people, but that would be, generally where people start, right? Is that true for you, Jimmy?
Absolutely. I think that's the key. I mean, to me, no matter how you're teaching, it goes back down to the foundations. I mean, knowing that basic cane arc, walking in step, how to hold the cane, what cane that is, and how to hold that cane and understand it, because it's developing that muscle memory so they so they don't have to think about those pieces.
Exactly.
So they can really start taking in that other environment pieces, and that's where you gain so much more information. Yeah. But initially they have to think about it. So it's, to give you an example, I have 5 new students right now, and I'm probably going to spend the first 1 to 2 weeks just focusing on basic fundamentals, because if they get those down, the rest of it starts to flow a whole lot easier. So just kind of taking it but giving them an opportunity to show that they know how to do that. I had my students, we have Independent Friday here, and they were out walking the hallways for probably about an hour, hour and a half. That's what their homework assignment was. And I wasn't around, but I heard them, and I heard they were doing a really nice job. So I kept mentioning to them, but they were just wandering through the building. So just giving them an opportunity to do those things.
Oh, yeah. And I was going to say, even my grad students' favorite word is automaticity. And we want to develop that with, we want them to have that automatic movement. I teach a orientation mobility for teachers class. And so a lot of the teachers that I teach, or several, have learned to drive at some point in their lives. And so they were drivers. And I liken it to driving. The first time someone taught you to drive, they didn't take you out on the interstate. You started in a parking lot, or maybe even in your driveway, so you got to learn how the pedals work and how to, the steering wheel is. And then eventually, after the mechanics of cane travel, then you can kind of move into more of the other stuff. So now we're going to kind of move into what this structured discovery cane travel kind of is. There's a picture on the screen, and this is Colin and one of a student, and they're on a block in Baltimore, one of our students. And so Colin Wong is on there, and so they're holding the long white canes and with the metal tips. And Colin, you can kind of see him maybe a little bit under the tree there if you're looking at the picture, and he's got on shades, and so does the student. So on our website, you'll find on the NBPCB website, you'll find the instructional services that are part of what makes up structured discovery. And that is the use of non-visual skills, problem-solving techniques, experiential learning, and confidence building experiences. So we'll put non-visual skills, we can start with that one if you want to, Jimmy, and since it's at the top.
Perfect. So, I think the non-visual piece is what we think about is one thing. The way I describe this is one of the reasons why I like, and I learned on the non-visual piece as a student when I came here before I really accepted my blindness, but also as there too. But it allows me to really focus on those other skills, focus on those other environmental clues. Well, I had a good amount of usable vision for a long time, and no matter what I did, I always tried to rely on it, whether it worked or it made me walk smack into a wall. But when I started learning how to listen better, it's not that I got super hearing or anything like that. I learned how to listen better. I learned how to take that sense of smell in on there. So it gives me that approach where it proves to me, and it also proves to me that I can do anything that I want. I don't need vision to be successful. And that's a big piece of that, is proving to them that they need vision, because the world society tells us in whole that you have to have vision to be successful on there. They'll say, oh, you can't do this, you can do that, you can't do that. So, but it starts proving to them that they can. So it really allows them to focus on those other senses to really, so they can master those senses. In most cases, most people are already those. I personally think they're probably already the master of what their vision is, whether it's good or bad. But then they have the opportunity to really to focus on the sense of smell, the sense of touch, the sense of hearing. And then they realize how they can incorporate all those together when they lead through training. Training is an opportunity, to me, I think is an opportunity for them to gain those skills and learn the skills. And this is the great opportunity just to really, so you can allow you to focus on those. And I'm sure Kristen has some things she'd like to add about that too.
So we do use, and I'll flip over to the next slide, and then, just kind of talk about the tools, and then I'll go back. We do use learning shades, sleep shades, visual occlusion, whatever terminology you want to use. That is an integral part of our philosophy in teaching. And we also use a very particular kind of cane. We use a long white cane. The length of the cane would be roughly 3 to 5 inches from the top of a person's head. So roughly eyebrow, nose, chin, somewhere in that vicinity. And the reason that our cane is so long is because it is meant to be held with a relaxed arm, so not an extended arm. Also, the cane is hollow and rigid. So, so it is not a collapsible cane. It does not fold. It has no elastic piece inside. And the reason for that is that we want it to be resonant, to bring up what Jimmy was just talking about, the tactile. We want to make sure that those tactile information is coming through. That's also the reason we have a metal tip on the end of our cane, is to increase the friction between the surface area, and so then it travels up the cane shaft to the hand, so you're getting a good connection between the ground and a person's hand. Otherwise, what you'll tend to find is if a person does not have that preview, they're going to have current view, which is what their feet feel. So, finding out that that there's a drop off whenever your foot hits it is not the best time to find out, right? Or that you're about to walk into the street because your feet feel the curb there. You want to have an extension. So the girl in this picture has her cane in a pencil grip, but this is what we would call maybe an extended pencil grip, because her wrist is closer to her abdomen, not real high, and she's got it extended at about a 45-degree angle. She can shorten up much faster this way, and she can also flip her grip to being an extended open palm technique, however she's inside in that. So now I'm going to go back. But the reason we focus on this kind of non-visual aspect and we spend so much time doing things under shades is because, well, we're working with someone whose vision is not reliable. Otherwise, they would need to use a cane. So to strengthen those other sensory channels, tactile and auditory, olfactory, hopefully nobody's licking anything, but those other channels, you want to cut off the thing that is taking brain power away from them, and that is the vision. And whenever someone is visually impaired, they usually have to concentrate on what they're looking at, right? It's not something that it takes over a lot of your sensory system. So whenever you do use occlusion, it allows someone to then concentrate and build and strengthen those sensory channels. And so I call that, if you've ever read anything by Marcia Tate, she does worksheets don't build dendrites, but that's what you're doing. You're building pathways, you're building dendrites while you use these non-visual skills. And you strengthen that, the speed at which you can gain that information and process that information. So like Jimmy was saying, the visual information is already there. It's been strengthened and confirmed and reconfirmed as someone has grown up. And so what they may not have been paying attention to other things, especially if someone is more spontaneously blind. So they went blind recently. You definitely need to really build their channels because, someone like me who grew up sighted, and I am sighted, when I was in training, putting on blindfold, everything sounded big and I wasn't able to process that information. So I needed to have time to process that information. And so that is something that does take time. That's part of it that does take time for us, is to build that that new assumptive world, that new world of sensory information that a person has. And they do that through time and practice using their non-visual skills. We do not have people wear shades all day long, all night long, and all weekend long. That would be cruel and unusual punishment. But I do know that many students, they get to a point at which they don't remember to take their shades off when they're eating lunch and things like that, because some of those things have become unnecessary. Like they don't really need to see to open the bag of chips, so they just don't think about it anymore. And then they'll realize later that they've had their shades on all through lunch, and it's not a big deal. But there is some research that suggests that You do need to keep shades on for an extended amount of time, not less than a certain amount of time, because otherwise, like for doing like sometimes I get a lot of calls for people who, especially at the university, want to do like sensory things. So I do caution against using that because it does nothing but scare a person and make them have unrealistic and unreasonable expectations for what it's like to be blind. So that's my kind of only, every time I talk about sleep shade use, I go, but don't use it unless you're planning to use it. For real, because small exposures of it do not do anything to build those pathways that you're looking for. Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was gonna say, just something to add to kind of talking about that, we do try to, we do have them using for during the day, during their training period. We only teach O&M maybe 2 hours a day, but we still want them to continue to wear them throughout that day because I'm the teacher, but they're their best teachers. They learn the best from throughout the day when they run into those problems when nobody's around trying to get to that next class or trying to get somewhere for lunch to go grab a bite to eat or whatever. They're learning those skills or whatever that may be. That's when they're really truly starting to gain the confidence. And it's such an important piece is that confidence piece as they have those experiences outside of the O&M piece of the class.
And what one of my friends who's a blind person, she described it to me as before she had Swiss cheese vision, and after she got training using occlusion, then it filled in the holes. It filled in all the gaps in that visual information for her, so that she could then, like, her vision then became gravy. It was extra and it was an added, something. It wasn't necessary, but
For the blind, can I help you? Speaking.
someone's mic's
it's
on. I
just-
don't know if you intend for that to be on. Nancy,
No, it's just.
do you have a question?
It's my cell phone. Yeah, well, thanks for calling back.
I'm going to mute you, Nancy. Okay. All right. So the next part is problem solving techniques, and we'll go into this if you want to a little bit in the next slide, I think.
Before we jump in, I want to say one more thing about the cane. We talked about we use a
Yeah.
longer cane, and I think this is an important piece. Why do we use that longer cane? To me, it's all about reaction time. It gives me time,
Agreed.
and she kind of hit on this a little bit about some when she was talking about the cane a little bit, but it gives me the time to find that drop off of their stairs versus I like to walk fast. I like to get my students to walk their natural flow or their natural gait, right? And on there. So I like to walk fast. So if I have a shorter cane, by the time I find with a shorter cane, I'm already tumbling down the stairs. So it gives me that extra reaction time. So that's the other important piece to think about the long white cane that we use, and one of the reasons why we use longer, just to give that extra reaction time.
And I think that with I don't know that anybody really uses sternum length anymore. I mean, you guys can tell me difference, but I've noticed more, it's more shoulder height. And it's supposed to be, held with an extended grip, extended arm. Now, very few people are doing that. People, you get tired and you can only hold that for so long. So this is because it is meant to be held with a more relaxed arm. That is one of the reasons, major reasons why the cane is so long, is because we're just, it doesn't go by the side. It goes roughly in the center of someone's body. It should be held with an arm that is bent at the elbow, about a fist width away from their body. And the other thing that is different with structure discovery is the handle of our cane. And I didn't really address that, but it is a cylinder. So there is no place to put a finger. The open palm technique is held with, I'm gonna put my hand up in the screen, like you're shaking someone's hand. So instead of having the pointer finger extended, it is held more like you're holding someone's hand. I'm trying to put my hand, my screen is on one place and my camera's in another place. So really look like I'm struggling here. So it's held more like you're about to grab something or make the kind of the come here motion with your fingers. How we actually move the cane is manipulated through using the fingers only and no wrist movement is involved. And the reason for that is that that is a sustainable motion that is not involving, well, it's involving joints, but it's more muscular, fine motor, and less gross motor movement. And so it doesn't cause any physical exhaustion. It does it does bother people to start. So I would be remiss if I didn't say that people have a hard time with it, but people do learn. And then it can be, because it's not using gross motor movements, it is sustainable over a very extended period of time and with very little fatigue.
Anything new?
Kristen,
always
can I?
Mhm.
Go ahead, Justin.
Oh, I was going to say, if I can ask a quick question, would you say also that the longer cane, the flexibility of it, it's easier on impact, like when it
Yes.
hits a person in the abdomen, that kind of thing as well?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and hopefully we're holding it with a loose grip so it doesn't, jab our stomachs. But agreed, the flexibility of the canes, especially I use a D cane now, which is Don Fedone. I like his. It's a woven fiberglass. It's very flexible. And it requires very little movement by the hand. Also, because of its flexibility, the arc will extend a little past the shoulders with very little movement of the hand. A lot of people will use a Chris Park cane, which is the NFB cane that comes with the free white cane program through the National Federation of the Blind. And that one also has a good amount of bend to it, not as much as the Don Fedone cane. And then there are some other canes too that have, varying degrees of flexibility. But I would say we're using a tap slide method of when we're arcing, because we want to tap on either side for echolocation feedback. But it also slides, so you have a little bit of constant contact on either side of the shoulders to find drop-offs and things like that. And so because of that flexibility of the cane, you've got like I said, you don't have to use very much movement. And like Desmond was saying, it has a tendency to bend before it breaks or and then it resumes its normal straight, so it will bounce back to its normal state. If you bend an aluminum cane, it's bent forever, right? So you're buying a new cane, but with that, it's going to be more likely to bend when it hits an obstacle or a person's foot. It also doesn't hurt when it hits people in front of you because it's so light. Anything else about canes or that we didn't cover? Because I feel like canes and shades are what a lot of people think of us as being kind of the big differences.
We had a question in the chat box and I missed it.
Okay, let me pull it up. How do you handle folks with poor hand strength who cannot manipulate cane and pencil grip? So you're talking about, well, hand strength is different than fine motor skills. So a person with fine motor skills may have to have a more adapted way that they hold the cane and pencil grip. But because the cane is so light, you really don't need a lot of strength. In fact, you don't want it to be you don't want too much of a grip on that cane in the first place, because the harder someone's holding that cane, the less feedback they're going to get, because they're kind of pushing. It's kind of like Braille. When you're reading Braille, you don't want to push down, otherwise you're just feeling paper. You're not feeling the words. So you want a real light touch. It's the same with cane travel. You want a nice light touch, let gravity help you out in that, so that you can really feel the texture.
I kind of tell my students that, when they're holding the cane there, I should be able to just reach out and grab a hold of it and jerk it out of their hand, and it should just almost fall right out of their hand. If they're holding to the point where they're holding where it stops, they're probably holding a little too tight.
Right. If someone, and somebody made a comment to me one day about a student that I trained, and they were going back to school, and they were like, somebody keeps kicking, she's going down the hallway and they keep kicking her cane out of her hand. And I'm like, well, I'm glad she's holding it so lightly. That's number one, A+ for her, but she probably will need to keep that more in pencil grip. So that's one of those things, but it is a much lighter cane. It is also a smaller circumference on that grip. But sometimes when people have a lot of fine motor difficulty, I'll encourage them to use 3 fingers in the front, 1 finger behind, and then they're going to use their arm a little bit more, which again, is not ideal. But if they have very limited fine motor, then we've got to go with what works, and that's the gross motor aspect.
I think I think you just really hit the nail there, is figuring out what works for that person. There's ways to, I mean, we had certain techniques, but if we can modify it to make it to maximize their ability to accomplish tasks, that's the main thing. So I may change on certain, depending on the skill, or we may have to work a little bit longer. It just depends on that situation. So you have to take each individual person from start to finish, start there and say, all right, this is what we have. Let's work towards this, and let's see how we can get there to make it work for that person. That individualized training. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the biggest, one of our biggest, because we're taking a person where they are, and that's part of the structure discovery philosophy, is that it's no real one size fits all. We have certain strategies that we're going to use with everyone. Like we said, we'll always start out with cane technique, building that skill set, but very quickly kind of move into letting that person kind of guide the instruction. So problem solving techniques is also on there. And I think that kind of goes with experiential learning and confidence building, which I think we get into a little bit further in. So I'll put that down for now, and move into the other big big difference. It might be a big difference. It might not be. But another thing that makes up structure discovery is the philosophy and the philosophical component of our teaching methods, and that is the development of personal attitudes, role modeling, addressing public misconceptions, and giving back. So I think my biggest thing with personal attitudes is that we use the word blind. And the cane is not something that is folded and put away. And I think that has a lot of impact. I work a lot with youth, and that was what I did for a long time. And I think the biggest thing that I tried to do for my students is to get them to understand that blind was an inclusive word, not an exclusive word. It was defining them by the strategies that they were using to complete everyday activities, and not a comparison to someone else. So not that, if a person chose to use the term visually impaired, then more, that's fine. That was their choice. However, I told them that the reason I was using the term blind, and the reason that I wanted them to have a cane that couldn't so easily be put away, was that we needed to address the elephant in the room, if you will. That coming to terms and accepting that this was an aspect of themselves that they could be proud of was an important thing for me as a teacher, and still is for me with my adult students. Jimmy, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's the elephant in the room. It's about that acceptance piece. I mean, I know for me, it was 20 years of struggling to the acceptance piece. And then as working in the center-based training, but also spending a couple of years in the field working out, going to see adults, that was a common theme. I had to have many conversations with them about, it's okay that you're blind. You still can do things. You have to do them differently. So getting them to change the misconception that blindness is power. I mean, that sight's power. It's necessarily not, and getting them to start thinking about that. And that comes through so many multiple conversations, and that talks about that philosophy piece, where, multiple pieces about talking to them about, how did you handle this? This is what I did, or having that role model or that person that they can reach out to on there. I know during COVID, one of the biggest things is we couldn't see anybody. But when I was working out in the field, the biggest thing that my people loved the most is we had a weekly, what I called power conversations. And we talked about the blindness piece, and they threaded off that because they heard other people having the same struggles, the same challenges, some of the successes, and they were able to feed off of each other and help each other grow. So just being able to openly have that conversation helps that person heal. Well, I won't say heal, yeah, because for me, you know, like when I was there, the skills wasn't the difficult piece. For me, it was all about the emotion. Without that philosophical, that piece of helping me learn how to believe in it's being okay to be blind, I surely wouldn't be sitting where I'm at right now. That's for sure. Because I wouldn't have believed it, because there's nothing that could convince me, but I started believing that. And you talk about that acceptance. There's so many layers of the acceptance. It's like peeling back an onion. You peel back the first layer. Yeah, I know I have a vision problem. Yeah, but do you really truly understand that? But getting them to get down to that core and understanding that core, that I'm okay, I'm going to be
Yeah.
okay, is the important piece.
Yeah, really getting someone to identify that they are blind will allow them to, like you said, accept all these other teaching strategies. Because if a person doesn't think that they need anything, well, then they're not going to learn anything. You know, it's more of I have to do this for my teacher. And that's very much what we are not about with structured discovery. We do not want the student working for the teacher. We want the student working for themselves. And one other way you can get someone to buy in and accept things about themselves is through role modeling. You know, and the ability to put on shades and demonstrate certain things that I'm teaching, especially those guided things like, you know, learning to identify a street. Well, surely they can figure it out for themselves eventually, but you know, it's so much easier just to go, hey, this is how you know it's a street. You know, but being able to demonstrate crossing streets or walking down a hallway, finding doors, those kinds of things, that ability to demonstrate those, or for them to be around others who they can identify with. So you know, having, like I said, I teach a group of teachers, and we teach them just a little bitty bit of structured discovery. But one thing that all of them, no matter the program that I'm teaching with, they are all able by the end of the training period to go into a public building and ask questions and order their own food and find a place to sit and eat lunch. And that's kind of like your graduation meal. So but that there's a feeling of success that they have as teachers, and then they find ways that they're going to role model that to their students, even if it's just going in their room, putting on shades in their classroom and being able to go throw something away and then return back to their desk, so that their student can see that they can be successful to do those things. And if their teacher can do it, then they can do it too. Everyone needs someone to look up to. And so the great thing about structured discovery being kind of founded in NFB principles is that the National Federation of the Blind provides us a host of blind people that are, doing different types of jobs that we can kind of help students to find someone, network with people who are doing the kinds of jobs they want to do. I mean, there's a guy who just broke the Guinness Book World Record for land speed racing under blindfold. So, and he's a graduate of one of the center I work at. So, not that I have a lot of future race car drivers, but if I did, there's a person I can call now, that would be able to provide mentoring and say, this is how those kinds of things gave me the confidence to do this. And he attributes it a lot to his cane travel. So that's great. But and then there's also addressing public misconceptions and getting people to realize that not everyone, just because the public is telling you something doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. Also, that's one thing. But also being able to have the confidence to deal with that and say, you know, I don't need help, and presenting yourself in a certain way and things like that. Do you have anything for either of those, Jimmy?
I would just say learning how to advocate for yourself is such an important piece, and that's really what that
Agreed.
focuses on. You know, how I can speak up and say, you know, and in a polite way as well. I mean, I think that's important because most people, they're there to help and they want to help. But you know, when somebody says no, they say no, that let them go unless they're standing in the middle of the street. But getting them to understand those misconceptions and not feeling uncomfortable when those situations arise takes experiences. So it's really about, and it takes lots of practice to advocate and being willing to speak up.
The last little bit that we have there is giving back. And that I think is an important part and often overlooked part, is that you can inspire, you can, you know, impart in your students that they are functional members of their society and their community. They should be doing things for others. I think a lot of times the general public will consider, think about, you know, blind people as those who are receiving from the community, and not necessarily people who are giving or, you know, paying forward to the community in any way. And so I know part of here at our center, we do multiple different drives through the year for different community programs. So, and volunteer quite a bit, so that the students here can become active members of their community, and they realize that they have the capacity to do so. Makes a person feel good.
Well, I think it gives them, I mean, by you doing those things at center, one thing that we do is we do a Christmas tree cutting and give it to a needy family and give a bunch of toys and all that kind of stuff. But they also, it kind of gives them that launching board to, so when they leave here, because training is for a very short period of their life, it gives them
Right.
that launching board and that courage. And that's the thing that gives them that courage to really to step out and go out and help others. So, and that's an important piece there.
Agreed. So now we get into the real the real I don't know, I guess the collegey part, the collegiate part. So this is all the theories and kind of where it comes from. We use cognitive learning theory, which is Piaget. We also use humanist theory, but that's not something we, you know, that's fairly new. So with cognitive learning theory, progress is measured through self-assessment and based on knowledge of results and intrinsic feedback. So that's a lot of, my dad would call $5 words there. So, and then we also, part of cognitive learning theory is the metacognition. So thinking about thinking, knowing how we process information, and the way that we do that is we kind of do that in the moment with students. We also use strategies of problem solving, which I didn't put on there because honestly I didn't know how to spell it, is Gestaltist. So it's Gestalt problem solving, which we use Socratic questioning techniques. We also have a stage theory of problem solving. I don't know any of us that really kind of had those stages memorized, except for when we had to take a test on it. But there are stages of problem solving, you know, kind of like the but we do use Socratic questioning techniques, which is helping a person to kind of get into the why of what they're thinking and why they're, you know, the how they're processing information. We use a lot of Bandura's theory of self-efficacy, which is role modeling, we kind of discussed before, social persuasion, reduction of stress or fear, and experience of success. Do you want to kind of pause there and really dig into Bandura? Because I feel like that's a huge thing that we talk about, is self-efficacy. I think that's a big part of structured discovery is a person's feeling about themselves. If you want to look up more information about Albert Bandura, self-efficacy, there's a lot of stuff on counseling theories use self-efficacy, but it's what you want is a person to be able to have enough experiences of success, but it has to be a certain kind of success. It has to be a success they were maybe that they had to work a little bit for.
Mhm.
And if they work a little bit for it, then it's a greater, you get a greater increase in someone's self-efficacy, and that's the way they feel about themselves. And that experience of success will then build on itself. So it will make a person want to try something a little bit harder and a little bit harder and a little bit more complex. And but I think the reduction of stress is a huge part there too, because you don't want to put a person out of their depth. So when I first started teaching, I was working with a woman who said that that we just let people wander around in structured discovery, and that's not true. Very specific wandering around that we're doing, but I think that people don't see, whenever people are noticing people out doing structured discovery cane trevor, they're seeing them further into the process where they are out, and an instructor is kind of more of a partner with the student, and they are a collaborator on problem solving and asking those questions and experiencing the world with them, maybe pointing out something here or there if necessary, but usually they are with them to know, to observe that performance as well. So I don't know if that makes any kind of sense. So go ahead, Jim.
No. I was just going to say, and you're absolutely right. It's about they're having the opportunity to. The way I kind of think about this with this, there is they have the opportunity to start believing, because in the beginning, as you start learning, yeah, I may believe, but you really truly don't believe. And I tell my students all the time, is like, you may not fully believe your capabilities, and I'm going to push you a little bit outside your comfort zone to help you grow, and I'm going to believe in you enough. But my ultimate end goal there, by pushing them kind of and challenging them to different types of environments or different types of experiences, is to get them to truly believe in themselves. Because just like she said, as you start believing in yourself, well, maybe I can do this. Let me go try this. And eventually you may not have to have me or Kristen or somebody pushing you to go try it. You go start doing it on your own. And that's really the ultimate end goal, is to get them moving around and thinking about doing those things. But it comes back to really truly believing in what they believing in themselves, and then believing in their abilities, because through the successes, and you're right, the routes that we typically give, there's components there that we know that you met, and a lot of times I can predict where they're going to have a problem at. But it's in that environment where they have that opportunity to problem solve, kind of going back to what we talked about, and then understand, hey, I just did this and I struggled through it, but I did it. And then it starts creating that flywheel of believing. And then as that wheel starts spinning a little bit faster and faster, they start pushing themselves. Start pushing themselves and climbing up that ladder a little bit further.
The next part is debrief. And I think that the debrief session is something that we do to help a person kind of take in. It's a very, very important part of a person it's the difference between having a lesson and having a learning opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can do a route, but until you're able to kind of break it down in the debrief, then where you can kind of suss out where a person is struggling, how they're feeling about how it's going. That's where you can start to do you can do a little bit of social persuasion in there and kind of go, but let's point you to this part where you did really great, and this part where where your struggle was. Tell me about that struggle. What was, what happened there, and how can we change it for the future, and things like that. It's kind of the counseling session of the travel route. But it's very important, because if I take someone out and they have a lot of problem solving opportunities, meaning that they had a little bit of struggle, a little more struggle than maybe they felt like they were comfortable with, or they couldn't get to that next thing and they're feeling kind of down. If I left it there, they're going to leave with that feeling of disappointment and they haven't learned anything. All they've learned is that they can't. So if you take them into that debrief session, you can really kind of help them to break down where the error took place and for themselves, so that way they can recognize it in the next time that they do that, something similar. And then I put a couple of things that if people want to read more about, debriefing method, ways in which you can debrief. There's motivational interviewing, perception. This is kind of, you can only really do that because perception is an active thing that's happening in a person and it's very individualized for that person. So if you really want to know what they're perceiving, you have to get them to kind of tell you. And then the assumptive world that I kind of talked about earlier, it's how a person can start to build expected outcomes for performance. So that way they can kind of, once you're taking them back through that road of the travel route, they can predict. They're able to then put that in their brain as things they can kind of predict. And then that gets confirmed when they do things correctly the next time. And then that will just become part of their intrinsic feedback. I expected to be in this place. When I did it, I got to that place. So I did it correctly. And then nobody has to tell them they did it correctly. Do you have anything else about the debrief, Jimmy?
No,
I know we're getting close on time.
No, I think you're fine. I think you covered it perfectly. It's just,
Okay.
it is a very important piece.
Yeah. The promotion model is just a teaching strategy that is based for children, also called the bottom-up approach. This is Joe Cutter has a book. He was one of the a big advocate for this, or a big part of this movement. He wrote a book called Independent Movement and the Blind Child, Independent Movement and Travel Blind Child, and you can get it on Amazon or through NBPCB, I think. But it is a it is a way of a developmental approach for teaching cane travel. And it's very much grounded in childhood development. So if you work with youth, it's a good, it was written for parents. So it does, like it's very kind of easy read. Not that parents need an easy read, but to me, I like an easy read. But it kind of breaks down some of the different ways that you can encourage movement in children. Instead of expecting perfection, you kind of expect them to grow into some of these things, like we were talking about with fine motor movements and things like that. They don't have that at a young age. They're very gross motor. So moving them, like as they move and grow, you kind of change your strategy a little bit as you go on. And he goes all the way through. So very good book. I can't speak highly enough about it. But he really breaks down some of the things that are part of structured discovery too, and ways to utilize them with children or people who are still in kind of that developmental level. It's also very helpful for people who are maybe developmentally elementary age. They might need to have one sense confirm another sense, that duology of stuff. So that they can then make sense of things. So that's promotion model. And then I have all of your different certification options. If you just listen to us talk and go, oh man, I want to be certified in that. Here's the different ways in which you can be certified. There is an NOMC. There's the different certifications that we have for structured discovery programs. NOMC is the cane travel, which I would assume most of you people are orientation mobility interested, because this is what it is. But there's also the rehab teaching certification, which is the NCRTB. And there's also our newest one, which is on assistive or access technology. So that's NCATB, so the National Certification in Access Technology for the Blind. And then we have the NCUEB. So this is our renewable certification for it's intended for people who are teaching Braille or using Braille and want to become certified. So it is not a teaching certification. It is strictly a code certification. So knowledge of the code certification. So any questions? Or anything to add, Jimmy?
Yeah, no, I think you covered everything, and I mean, I think typically we give you about 15 minutes. If you have some questions you would like to ask us about structure discovery, please feel free to ask away. You have the expert with Kristen right here. Kristen.
No. So I do have a QR code for certifications. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds if you want to go to our website, National Blindness Professional Certification Board. We love our acronyms. They wouldn't let me take the job until I could say it all quickly. So if you want to scan that QR code, or you can find us at nbpcb.org. And then this is the QR code for our Louisiana Tech University programs. We're now we're coming into year 4 of a 5-year grant cycle. So we're accepting applications for people who want to get a master's degree for free. All you have to do is move to Ruston, and we're a lovely little place to live. So if you have anybody who's interested, we just certified I believe I don't know. We just had someone sit for a certification, and she has her COM certification. She took a year after going through her internship with Jimmy in Virginia, and came to us in Louisiana and completed our program and sat for her exam this week. So she's done very well. And so we have a couple of things.
Couple quick questions. The decanes, we just ordered some for ourselves, but where's the best place to order those from? Where can they find more information?
All right. So decanes would be Don Fedone is his name, and he makes them, and I'm gonna have to look on my phone. Sorry guys. I think it's just dcanes.com, actually, d-canes.com. I'm gonna look real quick. I'm pretty sure that's true. And then I saw I
think Chris had a text about what text do you use for your students for training purposes when they're training?
Oh, okay. We use a few. We use the Foundations book. And we also use, I was looking to see if I had one sitting around, Cognitive Learning Theory with Jim, I'm going to say his name wrong, Metler. It's not Jim Metler. I don't know why I want to say Jim Metler. That's not his name. So we have that one. And let's see. We also use Richard Metler. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Cognitive Learning Theory and Cane Travel Instruction, A New Paradigm. We also use the Contemporary Issues in Orientation and Mobility Institute on Rehabilitation Issues, issue 29, which was in 2004. It was a culmination of comms instructors and NOMC instructors who came together and wrote this pretty comprehensive practice, text. So that's what we use for the majority. I also pull articles from different, more current research. And thank you, Jack, for putting decanes up there. The name of the textbook is Richard Metler's Cognitive Learning Theory, and the other is the Contemporary, I'm pulling up my syllabus here, sorry. Contemporary Issues in Orientation and Mobility Institute on Rehabilitation Issues 29, and you can find that, I believe if you do a search on it, I believe it's available online. If it isn't, you can email me at ksims or go to that website and I will send you the text or a link to it. So ksims at LATECH lawtech.edu. But I can get you, find it for you.
I think,
Any other questions?
yeah, I think there was
Did
a
I miss-
question about whether this is going to be recorded or put, or you have access to the PowerPoint. And our plan is the recording goes well. We're first of all, we're going to replay it again tonight at 7, but we're planning on putting it on our live binder on our website. And we can also probably attach the PowerPoint presentation along with it as well. So that should be on a live binder once it goes up, as long as my recording goes well. So
We also teach Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. I do a lot of different counseling theories and things like that. That's mostly what we teach our grad students, is it's a lot of counseling. We call ourselves walking psychologists. So do a little bit of walking therapy. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We will make sure we get that list of resources. All right. And then there's the archive for the 29th Institute on Rehab Issues. Is up in the chat.
awesome. Anybody else have any more questions?
Well, Jimmy and Susan and Christian, thank you so much. This has been very informative, and I think our audience appreciated it. And lots of participation from people listening in. And again, we will have our Mobility Monday this evening at 7 Eastern time. And we will replay the recording. Is that right, Jimmy?
Yes, ma'am. We plan on replaying the recording at that time. Yep. And
And are
we'll
you
have some
gonna-
time for questions too.
Okay. And so we appreciate everybody's participation. Come back on our next Mobility Monday.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
See you
y'all. Y'all have a
tonight.
great
Yep.
day.